Welcome back to Passionately Catholic. Today we're continuing our series looking at evidence and arguments for God's existence. Is God really real? What evidence do we have for that? Because if you're a natural skeptic like me, we need more than just, oh, God exists, just believe it. It's in the Bible. The church has always taught it. Okay, we're going to need a little bit more than that if you're a natural skeptic like me. Okay, so if you like this idea, be sure to like this video, subscribe to Passionately Catholic if you haven't already, so you don't miss any future videos from us. Today we're looking at, I love this. This is actually not an argument for God's existence, but it's a piece of very extremely powerful evidence, I think, for why it's logical to believe in God, or why we should pursue belief in God. Be open-minded to learn more, to explore the evidence more, and it's called Pascal's wager. Blaise Pascal lived hundreds of years ago during the Enlightenment, during a time where there was a lot of skepticism, and Pascal's wager is, I think, awesome because it really shakes the foundations of resistance to God and why someone might want to resist God. Okay, so here's what Pascal says. Imagine it's like gambling. Okay, imagine it's like a wager. You've got to place your bet. You're going to place your bet on whether God exists or God does not exist. Okay, now let's play this out. Imagine it like a Punnett square. Okay, like we got four possibilities. So imagine, here you have God turns out to exist, and here God does not turn out to exist after we die. Okay. And here you have, say, an atheist, and the atheist is going to live their life like hardcore atheist. We're not saying an atheist who's maybe open to God's existence. We're saying that they're absolutely closed to God, any relationship with God. They're closed to God's grace, okay? Not interested whatsoever, even turning their back on God through mortal sin, okay? So this would be our atheist living in that condition. Versus, say, a theist, but not just, even Satan knows God exists, and Satan's in hell, okay? So let's be very clear that this theist is trusting in God, has faith in God, is full of God's grace, is growing in a life of virtue and holiness, is receiving the sacraments, has a strong spiritual life, good relationship with God. Okay, so let's do our atheist first. So you have an atheist, and God turns out not to exist. So the atheist dies and there's no God, right? So the atheist is like, yes, see, I was right, okay? There's no God, I didn't have to waste my life on all this morality and these holidays and going to church on Sunday. I got to, watch football on Sunday, or go fishing or go shopping or whatever I do on Sunday. Okay, I didn't have to waste all my life. No. Nope, that's not what's gonna happen, because if the atheist dies and there's no God, guess what else? There's nothing, okay? There's no heaven, there's no afterlife, there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's nothing. So the atheist doesn't get to rejoice in that and be like, yay, okay? So let's move down on our Punnett square, okay? The theist dies and there's no God. Oh, bummer. I wanted to be in heaven. I wanted to experience eternal life with all my family and my loved ones who died before me, etc., etc. No. That's not what happens, okay? It's not bad, it's not negative, it's just neutral. Like the theist dies, and if there's no God, it's just over, okay? There's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no God. Like, it's done. Okay, but what happens if the atheist lives a life opposed to God, is in a state of mortal sin, and dies, and God does turn out to exist? Uh-oh. Okay, bad. But not just bad. Okay, like this atheist would put themselves in a condition where they could be headed to hell. Okay, now a theist can be headed to hell too. Let's be super, super clear on that. Okay, the theist can fall into a state of mortal sin and be rolling that way as well. But in this condition, this person who's turned their back on God, and God does turn out to exist, okay, it's not just bad. Like, it's like infinite bad. Like, it's for the rest of eternity, being damned to hell. Like, we can't even imagine how awful that would be. So we're not just talking about, oh, that's kind of bad, or it's like, oh, well, I would trade football or shopping or fishing or whatever, on the possibility that God might turn out not to exist. Not, like, this bet has an infinite negative to it, versus like the theist. The theist dies, God does turn out to exist. This is not just a good. It's not just, oh yeah, it was worth it to go to church and to follow this morality because God did turn out to exist. Yay, I have eternal life. No. That is so small. We're talking infinite positive, okay? Eye has not seen nor ear has heard what God has ready for those who love him, okay? What eternal life has to offer. This is infinitely positive. So what Pascal says is that you have everything to lose and nothing to gain by being a theist. Everything to lose and nothing to gain, okay? Because you have hell. Okay, you've eternal life to lose, and in comparison, what you could gain on this earth in terms of, oh, not having to follow a certain morality that you don't like or whatever, okay, or getting to spend your Sunday morning however you want, that is not even remotely close to even considerable. Okay, it'd be like a penny maybe versus an infinite amount of wealth. Okay, it's not even comparable. You have everything to lose and nothing to gain by being an atheist. But what about the theist? What about the believer in God? They have everything to gain. Everything to gain and nothing to lose, because whatever you'd have to bet, like let's say you're going to place a bet, and all you have a million to one, an infinite to one odds. Okay. I'm sorry, those aren't your odds. Maybe your odds are 50-50. I don't know what you consider the God question to be, but your payout is 1,000,000 to 1. Okay, so and your odds are fantastic. Your odds, even with the evidence we've gone over, like that, the chances of God's existence are like 99% plus likely that God exists due to intelligent designer and miracles and first cause and all the kind of stuff we've already talked about, and things way beyond what we have the opportunity and time to even talk about on camera. Okay, you have everything to gain and nothing to lose, because like if you could place a bet, like whatever you think your odds are, it doesn't matter. If your bet is only a penny, if that's all you have to invest, put down, that's all you have to risk is a penny, but you can gain an infinite amount of wealth from that bet, like who wouldn't pay the penny? You'd be insane not to risk and bet the penny for the opportunity to, I mean, even if your odds were 100 to 1, if there were 1,000 to 1, if there were 10,000 to 1, I'd give up the penny, I'd give up the dollar for the opportunity to have the infinite reward. And yet the opportunity for the infinite reward, I would argue, is ridiculously likely. You're crazy, Pascal says, not to place your bet on God. Okay, but there's actually a follow-up to this. What if somebody says, well, what if I just don't choose? What if I just don't choose that God exists or God doesn't exist? Pascal would argue that that is not an option. We do not have that as a choice, because if we basically choose not to choose, if we say, well, I'm an agnostic, I don't, there's not enough evidence, I'm not going to commit myself to God without 100% proof. We've already talked about that in a previous video, 100% proof. Check out the first video in this series on God and evidence for God's existence, okay? But if somebody says, "Oh, I'm just not going to commit to God or not God. I'm not going to commit to theism or atheism. I'm just going to stay in the middle because I don't have 100% proof." Pascal would say you cannot do that. Why? Because there's this great equalizer that's awaiting all of us, and that's death. Okay, we are going to die, and because of that fact, we can't just sit in the middle. We can't sit in indecision, because to choose not to decide is basically like choosing atheism. We're not choosing God and that relationship with God and growing in virtue and holiness and that relationship with God and God's grace. Okay, so imagine yourself, maybe on a mountain pass. You're up on a mountain and this huge storm comes in, and you have to get down the mountain to safety, or you're going to freeze. You're going to die. Okay, there is a deadline here. There's a timeline at work. You can't just stay on the mountain, but you can't really see. There's this blizzard, and you can't see clearly, and you don't have 100% proof of which way down the mountain is going to be safe, and if you take the wrong step, you could slip off the mountain and fall down into a crevasse, and you could die, all this kind of stuff. And they're kind of like at a fork in the road, right? And there's this way or there's this way, and you're not really sure which way to go. Pascal would say you can't just sit there on the mountain pass and not decide. You have to go. You've got to look at the evidence that you have available and make the best decision you can, and you've got to go. You can't just sit indecisive, right? Okay, so let us make that decision, Pascal would say, okay? So now maybe somebody who's a doubter, a skeptic, maybe an atheist, and they're looking at this going, yeah, okay, Pascal's wager makes sense. I really should place my bet on God. But I don't. Just because I think it's a good idea to place my bet on God, maybe I'll be nicer to you as the theist, as the believer in God, and I'll say, okay, I see why you place your bet on God. That's reasonable. I get that, but that still doesn't make me a believer. Okay, it still doesn't make me a believer that I believe in God just because I'm not gonna pick on you anymore for your belief, but this doesn't convince me that there is a God. So what do you do at that point? You can share with them evidence for God's existence. Or if you're in that boat yourself, dig deeper into the evidence for God's existence, like the videos we've already covered in the series. Look up Anthony Flew. What convinced him? This decades-long, professionally opposed to God atheist, okay? Like what convinced him of God's existence? Look at the intelligent designer argument. Look at the first cause argument. Look at miracles of Catholic saints. Look at the previous videos that we've proposed here. Consider the wealth of evidence supporting God's existence and approach it with an open mind and say, you know what, God, maybe even pray the prayer of the skeptic. God, if you're out there, I don't know if you're out there or not, but if you are out there, help me find you. Help me discover you. Help me build a relationship with you if you're real. Okay? God's not going to be offended at that as the opportunity for him to work more deeply in your life and for you to open up your heart and allow him that opportunity. If this was useful to you, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any more Passionately Catholic content. Like the video if you liked it. And if this would be useful to your parish, I do a parish mission, a 3-talk series on this that would be great for a conference, parish missions, what have you, where we look at evidence for God's existence, Christianity, Jesus Christ, and Catholicism. Why believe in God? Why be a Christian? Why be Catholic? Scientific evidence, philosophical evidence, archaeological evidence. We dive in with a lot of the stuff that we've already covered. As always, big thank you goes out to all of our patrons, especially on Patreon, who make everything we do at Passionately Catholic possible. I wish you all God's blessings and peace, and I look forward to being in touch with you again very soon.